All righty.
There we go. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. Just to let everyone know, I have hit the record button. We are recording this presentation. First off, I'd like to thank everyone for attending our session. And I also want to thank our panelists for joining us as well. I really appreciate all the hard work that they put into this presentation, and I hope you all enjoy it. And I also have to give a thank you to our reference librarians and managers in our information and reference department at the Cincinnati Public Library of Hamilton County. So I'm going to let one more person in. There we go. And for all of you who don't know, my name is Sandra Presley. I am the branch manager of the Price Hill Branch Library, and I'm so excited that we'll be able to present this presentation on Appalachian Heritage in Cincinnati. I'm going to turn my camera off, that way I can share my screen and share my presentation with you guys. Alrighty, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great, I'm gonna put this on presenter view. There we go. Hello, everybody. So my portion of the presentation, I'll talk about library advocacy for the Appalachian community. And I'm gonna admit Blair. And let's see, will it let me go forward? There we go. Again, my name is Sandra.
Who did it last time?
You have to do it.
I am the branch manager of the Price Hill Branch Library. And what we'll present here today is some archives that I found downtown. Like I think the information and reference librarians, they sent me lots of things that pertain specifically to the Appalachian community in Cincinnati. And here are some archives that they found. You guys are definitely allowed to contact myself or the information librarians downtown and request these types of things. They can look it up fairly quickly. And
Did Dad do it for you last time?
send them to you in an email, or we have.
Was it also through Zoom for the?
We have opened up some branches to allow browsing and tech access.
You can look for
Sandra, I don't think everybody's muted.
Hmm?
I think
no.
no.
Was last one you did.
Okay, I'm going in and muting everyone now. So isn't,
No.
if you guys could mute yourselves during this presentation, at the end, we'll make sure that you have an opportunity to ask questions. So if you don't mind muting yourself, that'd be great. We really appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm gonna move right back into here. So here's some articles that our information and reference librarians found. So we have from the Cincinnati Enquirer, July 14th, 1957. And it's talking about, you know, the industry and our neighbors, and it's talking about the Appalachian community who moved down to Cincinnati to find better living, better jobs, to support their families. And then it carries on to this side over to the left here. And then we have the Catholic Telegraph, the Enquirer, just talking about the great things that were happening in the Appalachian community in terms of their culture and heritage. And then the Memory from the Hills. We have some photographs there as well. And then we're moving on to the early 80s, where there was still and still are a great presence of the Appalachian community in Cincinnati. And then we have another one from the Cincinnati Post. well, two from the Cincinnati Post, but the one that I want to highlight is the one on the right. I believe it's on your right. And it's talking about Lower Price Hill. Lower Price Hill being the gateway where people were able to find those better jobs and a better living for themselves. And just highlighting the Appalachian community in a positive light. And, you know, we move on to the Price Hill branch, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen. And I want to highlight, you know, what have we done? The programming, the materials, the advocacy that's through our staff. And so I'll share a little bit about that. Our programming. We have the wonderful Amampe, who will speak later in our presentation, who has done programming for the Price Hill Branch Library and our system as a whole. And I'm very grateful that I was able to connect with her because I want to make sure that we continue that partnership. And then we have Linda Brim, who has done programming for us. This was back in 1996. And it was a children's program where she was an Appalachian storyteller and told the children different stories about the heritage and the culture and just stressing the importance of carrying that heritage on. And then this was a partnership with the UC and the Cincinnati Library. And there was a festival, a bluegrass festival, highlighting the music, the culture, and you can see some of the images in the back of just the visual, I like to say museum, and that festival. And then we talk about materials. So as you all know, you can get materials through our branches and through Search Ohio. I want to highlight Search Ohio because right now we aren't able to get some of these things just because of the current situation of the pandemic, and we need more libraries to get on board before we can start ordering through them. But when it is back up and running, you can order materials from other organizations through Search Ohio. So with these materials that we have from the Urban Appalachian Council, they partner with the University of Cincinnati and their Library Archives and Rare Books Department. And if anybody would like these links, I can send them out later. And this is where you can get some of their materials. And we also have more books that you can get from Louisville, Kentucky at the Phillison Historical Society. And they have some Urban Appalachian Council records from 1974 to 1978. And then we have the Bree College Hutchins Library Southern Appalachian Archival Collections that you can get materials from that are Appalachian specific. And also Frank Foster Memorial Urban Appalachian Library in Cincinnati, Ohio. And if some of these things aren't offered through Search Ohio, this is why I have the links, because you can go to the links and request them there. And then we move on to what is now called our Popular Library Department, but back in 1964, it was called the Films and Recordings Department. And this is a little article that they found from 1964 about important films that were acquired, reflecting some of the problems of the public concern in America of a film made in Cincinnati. And it's all about the migration of Appalachians to urban areas. There are 3 films that are highlighted in this article. One is Children Without Home. It's a film of social conscience, which is big in that time. And this docudrama is chronicles of the life of a young girl and her brother who comes from Detroit, they call it the Detroit Projects. And this film kind of examines how teachers and administrators at the Franklin Elementary School work with children and their family to break the cycle of poverty. And this film was made by a former Cincinnatian who is, and please excuse me if I pronounce it wrong, Charles Guggenheim. And then we also have a film, Harvest of Shame. This was a 1960 television documentary presented by the broadcast journalist Edward R. Morrow on CBS. And it showed the plight of American migrant agricultural workers. And the last film, which was a very popular film of its time, called The Newcomers. It was filmed in Cincinnati, so the public isn't the only film that we have highlighted as a library system. This was one, another big one. This was filmed in Cincinnati, and it was about the distressed Appalachians who came to Cincinnati in urgent need of new homes and jobs. And then we'll move on. So when we think of advocacy through staff, this was found from our administrative updates from 2001 to 2012. And so Barbara Childress was a children's librarian of ours, and she was a great advocate for the Appalachian community. And she it still is, actually, because her and her husband, Russ, they're musicians, and they have done and still do numerous concerts and programs that are Appalachian related. And she was a big reason why we got connected to Michael from the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition. And so I'm going to kind of segue over to Michael, because this is his turn of the presentation. He is with the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition. We'll talk about the regions and highlight some pretty prolific books. And two of those we do have in our system. So Michael, I'm going to stop sharing and allow you to start.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
My name is Michael Maloney, and I have, to begin with, two visual things. One is a map that helps me illustrate where the Appalachians in Cincinnati came from. And you see here a map of the different subregions of Appalachia. And the yellow part on the screen is called Central Appalachia. And that's sections of Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, and Virginia. And 2/3 of the Appalachians in Cincinnati came from the Kentucky part, and most of the others came from the rest of Central Appalachia, but we have people from all the sections of Southern and Northern and Central Appalachia. And then my next slide, I have my thing covered up here. So while I have your attention on visuals, I just wanted to show a slide that illustrates the importance of Cincinnati as a center of Appalachian culture. We probably have more hardbound and softbound books coming out of Appalachian Cincinnati than the capital of West Virginia or Berea or any other city that I know of in the mountains or anywhere else. So now I want to stop sharing and
What are you trying to do, Mike?
so until my assistant can fix that, I'm just going to go ahead and talk. The Great Migration from Eastern Kentucky and other parts of the Appalachian Mountains had brought millions of our people to Cincinnati and other cities outside the region. They came seeking jobs and a better way of life. Though most of us trace our heritage from the British Isles, we include people from Africa and Europe. We include Native Americans and people of mixed race in our ranks. We settled in places like the Mill Creek Valley, over the Rhine, Norwood, Newport, Covington, and communities throughout the region, including Hamilton, Middletown, and Dayton. We brought with us strong religious traditions, including Baptist, Pentecostal, and many other denominations. We brought a rich variety of musical traditions, including bluegrass, old time, country, and gospel. We brought gifted songwriters, poets, writers, and storytellers. We brought men and women and with leadership skills and people who served as doctors, nurses, lawyers, and school teachers. We worked in steel mills, auto plants, paper mills, and box factories. And a lot of women worked in toy factories or in the Avon plant here. We helped build roads and bridges, we built houses, we ran small businesses, and worked as cooks, wait persons, and cab drivers. We shared our music through King Records and Cincinnati radio and television industries, and we helped shape the culture of this region. Now, in reference to Price Hill, where our host library is, by the time I came here in the 60s, Lower Price Hill was already almost 100% Appalachian. And in subsequent decades, East Price Hill, West Price Hill, Westwood, and the whole area along the river, including Saddamsville, became very heavily Appalachian enclaves. They are now most of these neighborhoods that I mentioned are very diverse, including African Americans and Hispanics. Like other immigrant groups, we had to fight stereotypes, name calling, and discrimination. One of the low points was a time during the 70s when the city decided that some of the neighborhoods were hopeless and they would just write them off and not apply grants and that sort of thing there. By then, we had formed the Urban Appalachian Council, which aligned with African American leaders, and we stopped that policy before it even got debated in City Council. But we have had to fight for our rights like other marginalized groups. So we organized the Urban Appalachian Council as our representative group, and now that's replaced by our organization, the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition. Over time, to help our people, we opened storefront GED centers and advocated for better schools for our children. One of the results of that advocacy is that we now have Euler School, which has gained national attention as a community school, and Riverfront East out in the East End. We got Appalachians included in Cincinnati's Human Rights Ordinance, and we got recognition by the Ohio Arts Council. We organized festivals, a big one each May at Old Coney, and smaller ones like the Lower Price Hill Community Festival, and set up Appalachian Studies courses at local universities. I noticed Kurt Ellison is on this call, and he's with one of those in the Miami Regionals. We ran story circles, storytellings, literary salons, and cultural programs at schools, libraries, and churches. We ran cultural competency sessions for police, social workers, religious leaders, and teachers. I mentioned we had to fight stereotypes and name calling. We've been called hillbillies, briarhoppers, rednecks, crackers, and Sams. That's Southern Appalachian migrants. Because we had a distinct dialect that is part Southern, we've been considered racist and ignorant. One member of City Council compared our organization once to the Ku Klux Klan. One city manager used the word hillbilly in a City Council meeting. He was from Arkansas and thought it was okay to use that word. It may surprise you that there was a time when we had to fight police brutality. Our youth were harassed when police found them in the, quote, wrong neighborhood, end quote. Our men got beaten or even killed when they were thought to be acting out. Does that sound familiar now? Things are better now for white Appalachians, not necessarily for black Appalachians. But we still have to be alert to issues of inclusion and to issues of discrimination. For example, we're working now to make sure that testing and treatment sites are available in all low-income neighborhoods in Cincinnati for the COVID virus. We've had our moments of celebration and triumph. We've had our low points that I've mentioned some of. Among the high points were Covington, Cincinnati, and Dayton have had Appalachian mayors. And Pauletta Hansel, who's on this program, was Cincinnati's first poet laureate. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Pauletta Hansel, and I'm a member of the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition's core membership group. And as Mike said, I am also a poet, and I've had the privilege over the last many years to work with folks throughout Greater Cincinnati and beyond, but throughout Greater Cincinnati to tell their stories of their lives, their families, and their neighborhoods, and have done that also for the Urban Appalachian Council and now for the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition. So my part is to kind of serve as a sort of a sorbet between the courses of learning about the Appalachian community. What I'm going to do is to read poems that were written by members of the Urban Appalachian community that I've worked with over the years. The first one I'm going to read is by Donna Jones, who I consider to be one of the granddames, one of the grandmothers, great-grandmothers now of Lower Price Hill. And I've chosen this as sort of the segue between Mike and Maureen Sullivan, who'll be speaking next, because Donna has called this poem My Life, and it talks about how it was to be a young urban Appalachian girl and now woman in the neighborhood of Lower Price Hill. So by Donna Jones, My Life. I was born in a place that my mom and dad didn't fit in, that grandma was scared to death of and didn't venture out much in that place. I always used to like sitting in the kitchen while my mom, aunt, and grandma would talk about everything and everybody. I remember my uncle climbing the fire escape to the 3rd floor where he pressed his face to the screen, scaring all the women so much they shoved the kids into the chifforobe for safety. My first friend was the little girl next door. We shared our toys through a hole in the fence. She wasn't allowed to play with me in my yard because my parents, aunts, uncles, grandma, and grandpa talked funny. I've wondered how my family got all its strength, sometimes pulling together and sometimes apart, but still pulling through. I've seen other families split apart, never make up, and forgetting that they belong to a bigger community than just husband, wife, daughter, son. Families are made up of more than just blood. It scares me that my own children are forgetting picnics, backyard grill outs, answering your family's call in the middle of the night, caring about their sister or their brother or others when I'm gone. I don't know where my life journey is going to take me because every day I strive to do more and learn more. I want to change the world. So that's from Donna Jones. And now I'm going to turn things over to Maureen Sullivan, who will talk about the work of the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition, as well as her own history in the Urban Appalachian community.
Hi, everybody. I'll be relatively brief. My name, as Pauletta said, is Maureen Sullivan. I actually started with Appalachian organizational work back in the 60s when I was one of the advisory group members from over the Rhine in relationship to the Appalachian Identity Center. And it was out of the Appalachian Identity Center and the Cincinnati Human Relations Commission, Appalachian Commission, the joining of those two that formed the Urban Appalachian Council in 1974. Mike was the first director, and actually After he left, there was a person that was in place for a while, and then I actually became the third director of the Urban Appalachian Council and served for about 3 decades, actually. I loved UAC, and one of the reasons that I love UAC probably was because, just as Pauletta was talking about Donna Jones, I was thinking about the strength and the ability of many of the people that I got to know and work with as part of the Urban Appalachian Council. Some of them were artists like Amope, some of them were service workers like Nancy, who will both be talking about their work more, but somehow or other, you know, during those many years of work, we really addressed issues. We brought together, as Mike said, the Adult Education Network, where we worked in 7 different neighborhoods, eventually 10 different neighborhoods, working on the folks, providing for folks kind of second chance education, people that had not been able to finish their high school degrees for one reason or another, some of them even grade school degrees, were able to come back, use their talents and whatever support we could provide to get their education and move on into jobs, become a little bit more stable in their life situation, use some of that strength to get their education and move forward, and actually to be able to help their children more too, be able to help them with their schoolwork. Mike talked a lot about the different neighborhoods and kind of the settlement patterns, and certainly about some of the issues that were faced. And I just want to do a couple of quick bridge pieces. One of the things that, as I became the director of UAC and worked with our board and volunteers, we figured that we needed to do kind of a mission statement, just as all nonprofit organizations have to have their mission statements. And what we eventually came up with was the mission of the Urban Appalachian Council was to promote a decent quality of life for urban Appalachians and their neighbors. One of the things I want to say about that was at that time, urban Appalachians tended to settle in particular neighborhoods. And so the idea of neighborhood was very important. And the ones that we worked most in were the inner city neighborhoods. But the other part of that is, and not just their own urban Appalachian selves, but their neighbors. Because how can you have a decent quality of life if your neighbors don't have a decent quality of life? So we worked very closely with folks who didn't have the Appalachian heritage, but who maybe were African American, maybe were from, you know, South America or Mexico or wherever. Whoever was there became a part of our total work, and that was very important to us. The fact of the matter too is that after 2008, when the Great Recession hit, and so many of our people experienced, you know, they'd just gotten to the place sometimes where they were able to get mortgages and have homes and whatever. And the whole, one of the big issues of the Great Recession was that many houses, many homes were taken back. People were put out of their houses. And that was a great sadness and a great upheaval in terms of the economy. I actually, well, this is just a personal bit of like information that you don't even need to know, but still yet, I was diagnosed with cancer in 2011, had just retired, and so kind of fell out of activity with UAC for a few years, but the council, led by a new director, and then working with the board, eventually decided that they needed to close the doors. Like, funding was very difficult. The new director didn't have a history in Cincinnati or the greater Cincinnati area, and it just became very difficult all the way around. So when the doors were closed, though, or just about to close, some of us got together and thought, the work isn't finished, though. And as long as there's still work to do, isn't there a reason to try to work together to continue, to do some things with the community that can move us to a different place? And so that as a part of moving in that direction, one of the things that we did was go out into the communities and listen to people, get people together and talk and listen. And out of that listening, and so many different neighborhoods with so many different groups, came what we decided and formed into what we call the UAC calling. The Urban Appalachian Community Coalition really takes this as kind of a guiding statement and articulation of what people in the community hold dear. So I'm going to read it very quickly, well, not so quickly, but, and then end my part of the presentation. The UACC calling. We believe in the irrepressible spirit of the Appalachian people, and that the nurturing of that spirit benefits Greater Cincinnati through our wisdom, informed by both our Appalachian heritage and our urban experiences. Resistance to threats to individual, family, and community well-being. Respect for community as both place and the people who live there. Artistic and cultural expressions of who we were and who we are. Inclusiveness that recognizes how people are alike rather than different. And advocacy on behalf of those whose voices have not been heard. The Appalachian spirit is a positive and powerful force toward individual, family, and community health, transformation, and empowerment. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. The poem that I'm going to read between Maureen and our next speaker is a poem that was written as part of the Community Listening Project. And I think it helps to exemplify one of the things that we mean when we talk about family, when we talk about community not just being the place, but also the people who live there. It is called Lower Price Hill. Lower Price Hill is bringing dishes for each other's families when comfort is needed. Donna's meatloaf, the other Donna's bigamise, Sue's loaded potatoes, Patty's baked beans, but I like her potato salad better, Lori's mashed potatoes, Steve's chocolate cake, I bring the pop, and oh my God, your pineapple upside down cake is the bomb. And Julie brings, she gives. Lower Price Hill is Maddie always saying, why weren't you at church? Donna saying, let's go eat, Sue. No matter where we are, it's always about food. Fred says, let's get that haunted house going. And Jim, we've got to have something for the kids. Jim and Fred are on their third generation of Lower Price Hill kids. Lower Price Hill is everyone always doing something for someone. Lower Price Hill is our joy, our pride, our pain, our sorrow. It's where family doesn't necessarily mean blood. So this poem was composed by me with words from the Lower Price Hill Women's Group. And our next speaker, Nancy Laird, is part of that family that doesn't necessarily mean blood in Lower Price Hill and throughout the Appalachian neighborhood, and is one of the people who has helped make the bridge from the Urban Appalachian Council's focus on and integration into the Appalachian communities, neighborhoods, and our current work as a coalition of people from throughout the city. So I'm going to turn things over to Nancy to talk about her good work.
Thank you. My name is Nancy Laird, and I consider the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition, I call us an agency without walls, because we do our work everywhere, and it's not encompassed by any boundaries, even by neighborhoods or things. I did not know I was Appalachian until Maureen Sullivan and her husband Ernie Monette came to do a training when I was working at community Catholic Social Services, and they did a presentation. And you know how Mike talked about not fitting in. You know how it is. You're there, but you never quite fit in, and you don't know why, and you always try to fit in. But I'm the oldest of 9, and that was something that didn't fit in the neighborhood. And then, of course, I had my mother, my grandmother sewed, so we had lovely clothes, but they weren't store-bought, so that doesn't fit in. So there's a lot of things that as I was growing up, as I was young, it didn't fit in, but I didn't understand. But as an adult, when I found out about the Appalachian culture and about where my family came from, I knew where my family came from. It was exciting. It gave it a name, and it gave it a presence, and that's what was really special about that. I'm touching my thing now because I wanted to keep track of my 7 minutes. So what we're doing is we're trying to share some of the experiences. And what happens is in these communities, I started out at the Appalachian Identity Center, which was down on Walnut Street, down and over the Rhine. And then I moved to, they moved me to Camp Washington, and then East Price Hill, and I'm in Lower Price Hill right now. But people become a family in the neighborhoods, and it's not just blood. It is about sharing, and it's about taking care of folks who need something, about comfort, food for comfort, food, raising money, watching kids. And even now, I'm on my 4th generation, and so are Jim and Fred. That poem was the one poem that was read. We're all on our 4th generation of kids and families in these neighborhoods, and it's wonderful. We knew their grandparents. We worked with their grandparents when they were young and things, and it's really one of those things that just mean a whole lot, and it makes it so important to create that bridge between folks who need things and people and the services, and getting there and understanding that not everybody has a computer, not everybody has email. So there has to be people there. There has to be services. There has to be things to help folks move from one part of the system when it works a certain way to another. And all of a sudden, if you need help, where do you go? And you don't know because you've never done it before. That's what we do. We are there. We work as a family, and people tell other stories, and people bring other folks to us, and this is how it works. And what's so important right now to me that I'm very concerned about is the education, because when there were 750,000 people lost their job during the Grand Migration in the 40s. That was jobs. Along with those jobs came families. So there were children, so the number is huge. It's, was in the millions, like Mike said. And so they came to Cincinnati, and then over the Rhine, the police did not like the Appalachians. And when Ernie came to talk to us, he told us how 2 families or so would share an apartment because there was no extra apartments around. And but the police did not, it was definitely a thing of prejudice against the Appalachian community, because they didn't know them, and we talked funny and all these different things. We had different values, and that's where all this comes in. What's happening now in this culture thing that we're going through is that we have to learn to appreciate each other's values. But the education I'm concerned about is now when it starts with, what are we going to do with the kids when they go back to school with this virus thing? My big concern is to be sure that they've got the things they need. There's going to be some folks who don't and can't use computers. there's going to be folks who will need to have the face one-on-one time and things like that. And I'm working right now with Santa Maria, and we had like 60 kids a day, 3 times a week, come in, and it was their safe place. There's no safe place now. There's no place for them to go. And this is in Lower Price Hill. And you know, when you're used to going to a place, you can hang out, you can get some snacks, you can eat. And that's what we have to be so much aware of, is that what is needed in this city. We're an Appalachian city. I mean, there's a huge number of, but Appalachians are so many colors, and what people don't understand is we're like this giant mixing bowl of all these wonderful cultures and backgrounds and religions and things, and even the cooking. It's so much fun talking to people about the food, because everybody has certain foods you always ate and your favorite birthday food that they, you know, and it's just what really is so important. And so we have to become so aware. And our challenge today is to be aware and to support all these people who are still, they don't fit in. And the ones that don't fit in, how can we help them feel part of? And that's what's really important right now, as I see it, in the work that we do for the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition. And because, as Maureen said, it's not just Appalachian, it's Appalachian and neighbors and friends. It's everybody. Because if one person is good and the other one isn't, then nobody's good. So we need to bring that, we need to bring these gifts and this strength that we have to the whole community. And I feel like that's our challenge. And so as we go through this, I'm so excited. I mean, when I found out I was Appalachian, when Ernie did his thing at the thing, I mean, when you find out you fit and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that, you know, and it's just amazing what it does for you personally. I made all my family. I'm the oldest of 9, made the whole family. I had 2 or 3 pages of notes. They all had to hear my notes. I mean, I made them all listen because I felt it was that important. So the more that we can be inclusive, I think that's what we have to be aware of. And I think this is so great what Sandra is doing with the library, because the library is a place where people go. And that the East Price Hill Library was always well used. It was always well used. As a child, I lived on Hawthorne. I lived in the library. I mean, I was there all the time. So it's just one of those wonderful things. So we have to be aware and commit to reaching out and just even to our neighbors, if we see something or notice someone who might be older and can't get around, we just need to pay attention, I think, to each other. So in the whole, as this encompasses everything, the Appalachian culture and our meaning and what we're here for, I think what it is to be inclusive and to help each other and appreciate our differences. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nancy. I'm going to read a final poem, but I want to point out before I do that, a couple of things. One is that in case folks are not familiar with Lower Price Hill, Mike Maloney is sitting in Lower Price Hill right now. Actually, he's sitting in his own office, I presume, but he has a lovely picture of the Lower Price Hill neighborhood back behind him. Whereas Mope and I have chosen to go to our home family roots. I've got an Eastern Kentucky town behind me. It's actually Heinemann, Kentucky, which is not where I lived, but in terms of the little town, but it's one of the little towns that have been very important to me. And I think Mope is going to talk about what she has behind her as part of her conversation next. But I know it's not too far away from Arlington. At least that's my guess.
That's right.
So good, I got the thumbs up. So just a couple of other things to segue from what Nancy said. She talked about the mixing bowl, and one of the the metaphors we've always liked to use, not just as poets, but also all of Urban Appalachian Community Coalition, is the idea that we're a salad bowl where sort of all the tastes and textures are, and colors and delights are all still visible and distinct, versus a blender where it all gets sort of blended up together into one mush. So that's how I think of that metaphor, and I'm glad to hear Nancy to keep referring to it because it's so important. And then the other thing that Nancy said that I think is a good segue to the last poem that I will read is how when Ernie Minette came and his talk helped Nancy understand something of who she was, that's something that we're really able to do for each other as elders to young people or elders to elders, is by being aware of the specificity of our own background and how that helps make us who we are. We can help other people find their own image in themselves and their own voice and their own distinctness. And so here's a poem from Euler High School that is again a sort of a salad bowl poem because it's many voices blended together. Called We Are From Euler. I am from the city, but I talk like I'm from the country. I am from my old Kentucky home, waking up to the rooster's crow. I was born with my great-grandma's name. My name comes with a lifetime of misspellings and mispronunciations. I am from parallel parking and lawn chairs and cigarettes on the sidewalk in the evening, from where family sticks together and loves like no other. I am from weekends filled with cookouts and family birthday parties. I am from hard work and drive, from remembered hopes and dreams, and these things are what built me. From my head to my toe, I am from changes, good and bad. I'm from the hood where most never make it. I am from torn up houses, from foster care, from the ghetto filled with drugs and bullets, a concrete place that I hate to call my home. I am from issues, but pretending they aren't there isn't one. I am from befores and afters that blend into now. I don't know where I am going because I only know the past, but I do know where I'm from and have hopes of who I'll become. I am going to do the things nobody said I could. I am from Euler, helping you determine your place in the world, no matter the circumstances. I am from Euler, a place I consider home. So one of the things that our next speaker has devoted her life to is this idea of knowing where you're from. And the old saying, how can I know where I'm going if I don't know where I come from? And so I'm pleased to introduce Mope Carter de Boyku as our last speaker.
Thank you so much, Pauletta. I love this cultural salad idea where you get an eclectic forkful with every bite. The background behind me is part of the landscape in Lawrence County, Ohio, which you all may know is squeezed down at the bottom of the state between West Virginia and Kentucky. It was part of what was called the Hanging Rock Iron District and produced war material during the Civil War that clad the Union vessels. And so when we came on this and I figured I was the storyteller that Mike was talking about, Nancy asked me, are you going to tell a story? And I was thinking, no. And then we went through our run through and everybody else gave so many facts and figures. I said, I guess I better tell a story. So Nancy, this is dedicated to you. It's an original and some of you may know the setting and the details. As we know, all good stories start with once upon a time. Not so long ago, back in the 1950s, there was a little girl with long dark braids and pecan brown skin living in the small Ohio River town of Ironton, a former Underground Railroad refuge. Her folks had arrived there in the 1920s from the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia and the Smokies of Tennessee and Georgia. She knew her roots. Her grandpa Ellis repeated the tale of how his threatened lynching made the family leave their land and move north. The little girl listened intently and watched tears slide down his face every Memorial Day when he told that tale. Her grandpa Carter came from a long line of metal workers and was recruited by the C&O Railroad to build the new roundhouse in Russell, Kentucky. He went back to Appomattox several times a year, traveling by memory because he could neither read nor write much except his name. She grew up loving words and books about faraway places and memorizing the names of her ancestors. She yearned for the annual trips down home across the mountains to see kin, family that kept kin through weekly letters. This was long before cell phones, and calling south meant a huge long distance phone bill. Back then, folks wrote letters and sent telegrams for immediate news. The concept of culture fascinated her. She stared at pictures from her father's military time in Japan, in National Geographic magazines, and the many pictures of foreign land in the family's Grolier encyclopedia set. She knew one day she would really know what culture was and write about it. There was no profession called storyteller back then. Storytellers were grandparents and old cousins who talked about old times. She would be an artist, a stage performer, and a writer, even if her mother and other parents thought it was a useless pipe dream. Her mother told her she should be a teacher. After leaving the Ohio State University, where everyone said she talked funny, she moved to Cincinnati in 1972. She had always thought it a cultured town from her month-long visits there as a child. She studied cultural geography in the college and then spent years coming to understand what it meant to be African American. That was the new designation for mixed blood people like herself with brown skin. Her birth certificate said colored. In 1988, she married a Yoruba man, traveled to the African continent 3 times, and managed a dance company from Nigeria, which performed at Cincinnati's last International Folk Festival. She was content until she had children. Having grown up in a small town where everything was accessible, she pondered how she would raise her children in an environment where color and class determined what was socially accessible. She mourned that her kids would grow up urban with all the stereotypes that would bring. It wasn't as if that wasn't worry enough, but her marriage had withered and she would have to raise her children alone. She pondered her dilemma. Then she remembered that Mother's Day weekend back in the late 1970s when she found the ACDA Appalachian Festival at Coney Island, Cincinnati's historic amusement park. A work buddy at the UC library noticed she was homesick and told her about this great festival that celebrated mountain culture. She remembered that her senior class had been the first integrated group to go to Coney. She knew exactly where it was. Her family passed it every time they came to Cincinnati on US 52, which was 2nd Street in Ironton. She remembered how comfortable she had felt with the music, the crafters and artisans, and of course, the food. Back then, she had stumbled upon a table sponsored by the Urban Appalachian Council. They had a glass enclosed map of Appalachia and were encouraging visitors to place an adhesive dot on the glass where they saw their home place. She proudly placed hers on Ironton. Perhaps that experience held the key. During this tumultuous time with small kids and no support, she developed a talent for storytelling. Her repertoire included both Brer Rabbit stories and Jack Tales that gave her an opportunity to speak in her home dialect. Her skill had gotten her accepted to the Ohio Art Council's Artist in Education program in 1990. It was through storytelling that she first met Barb Childers, and then Mrs. Louise Spiegel, an avid advocate for urban Appalachians. This was at the first Fine Arts Fund, now Arts Wave, sampler weekend at Enjoy the Arts in Over the Rhine. Louise recommended her to Maureen Sullivan, then the executive director of the Urban Appalachian Council. It was a match made in another dimension. So Omope Carter Boyku found a way to express her true self and was welcomed by the same people she had met at the festival so many years before. They felt like long lost kinfolk. Since then, Omope's been dedicated to addressing how someone can be brown and Appalachian at the same time, as Appalachia is a landscape and a mindset. Her commitment's been recognized and awarded by several regional institutions. In 1995, she presented at the conference The Art of Survival in Nuremberg, Germany, about quilting as cottage industry by Appalachian women on behalf of Dr. Carolyn Mazlumi, the founder director of the Women of Color Quilters Network. In 2008, she was contracted by the US State Department to perform Appalachian folklore in 7 cities in Turkey. By being adopted by the Price Hill community, she found a cultural base for her children while advocating for creative learning styles, including Cincinnati's first K-12 charter school, designing and managing heritage arts and cultural programs for corporate audiences and kids and adults in Cincinnati's Appalachian neighborhoods, and for the Cincinnati Arts Association. Her childhood dreams of becoming a writer have been nurtured by her UAC colleagues, Pauletta Hansel and other course stewards. Omope's poems and short stories have been published in regional journals, and she's written and voiced narration for several PBS documentaries and for the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center. And her video, History Keeper, is on the U.S. National Park Service's Network to Freedom YouTube channel. All those childhood dreams come true by the help of her community. That's why she knows that even if Jack or Jill were raised in the country, with the right emotional support, they can learn to thrive in the urban concrete jungle. As a griot culture keeper, it's important that every generation know their roots. Knowing where and who we come from keeps us centered, focused, grounded as we journey toward our destiny. And you know how all good stories end. They all lived, say it together, happily ever after. The end. Thank you all for listening.
That was great. Thank you.
That was amazing. Loved it.
It was.
Thank you, thank you. Next time, a folktale.
We'd welcome it.
Mope, that was a folk tale because you're folk.
Is that folk?
You keep up, Sonny.
I think I'll be folk. Thank you all so much. I mean, you know, I work with UAC as an artist, but I'm as much a client as I am a steward, because, you know, the love of folks who understand you is the soil that we need to thrive. And boy, oh boy, have I enjoyed my stay with UACC.
Oh, good.
That's
Yes,
great.
we
Thank
do.
you.
Okay.
Well
So
done.
is it my turn?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I do
Okay.
believe it's going back to Sister Sandra there.
Yes.
So I am going to share my screen again, just to give you some more things of what we as a library are doing for not only the Price Hill community, but the Appalachian community too. And let me stop my video and share. There we go, where we left off. All right. So let me see if I can, there we go. So what are we currently doing? We, as in the library, we have materials. Out of all of our materials in the Cincinnati Public Library of Cincinnati, Hamilton County, we have 953 Appalachian specific materials, and that's DVDs, books, e-materials. It does not include the periodicals that it does not include the news articles that I showed you guys earlier. But then we also think about like our programming. Currently, you know, I'm at the Price Hill branch, but I was at the West End branch prior to this, and just working for both communities who are definitely aware and very involved with the people who live there and making sure that their needs are met is just very inspiring and makes me want to come to work every day. So partners like UAC make it so great to be a part of such a great community. But the programming that we were doing was, we had a food petting zoo where the kids came in and I had my skillet and got some tomatoes and tomatillos and showed them how to make salsa from scratch. And the kids were brave and just so open to the experience and willing to try it, and loved every bit of that salsa that they made. We also have been having tech programs for the kids where we brought in laptops and different tech kits, whether it be Ozobots or Lego WeDo kits and virtual kits where they can experience other types of STEM. And I also, along with that food petting zoo, was in the midst of planning with Turner Farms so they could come in and give some knowledge about the food that the kids are eating. And then the pandemic hit. And, you know, even though we are in the midst of a pandemic, the library is still here for the public. We've amped up our virtual programming. You might have seen me myself doing story times while I'm not a children's librarian anymore. I'm a manager, but I still felt like it was very important that the kids had some representation from their branch. And, you know, it's me and my children's librarian partner doing that, and me kind of giving her a break in the process. And, you know, we think about outreach, which Price Hill has an immense amount of resources for their community. And it's so great that I have great partners like UAC and Santa Maria, who I'm in the talks with providing books to go with their meal program, and my Cincy, and they were going to come in and do some music programs for the kids. And Price Hill will, you know, while we're in the midst of the pandemic, I've been attending their weekly online virtual meetings every Monday at 6 p.m. just to give everybody an update on, you know, what's happening with the library and figuring out how we can be a better servants to the community. And, you know, with us starting to slowly back open, it makes me very excited, because the library was the last place you could go and just be without any expectation of buying anything or using the library in any particular way. And the kids, oh, I miss the kids. I miss them so much. And, you know, the adults that I regularly interacted with, I'm so excited that they will have something to come back to. And then, you know, thinking about me as being the manager of that branch and how to help my staff move into the realm of being advocates for the Appalachian community and the Price Hill community as a whole. You know, my role and goal will be to strengthen and retain community partnerships. So like we're doing now with UAC, Price Hill will, Santa Maria, my Cincinnati, and then providing innovative outreach, whether that be kind of like what we did with the washing well, and providing them with magazines and materials that the people who are using the facility, they were able to use those materials while they were washing their clothes and take them home and bring them back when they felt like they needed it. And going to Euler for outreach, which my children's librarian did the bulk of that, where she did in-class story times, and she also did, you know, presentations to not only the students, but the parents and the educators as well, and making sure they had the resources that they needed. and also, you know, attending the Lower Price Hill Community Council meetings and informing, you know, the community of what's going on in the Price Hill branch. And I want, one of my other goals is to work to increase Appalachian specific materials in the branch. I'm sure everybody knows about the book Educated, and everybody knows about the book Hillbilly Elegy, which are two of my new favorites, because I never thought that in a million years I would be able to relate so much to people from Appalachia. And, you know, I had said that to my mom, and she said, you know, Sandra, we had family in Kentucky who were Appalachia, and my father-in-law chimed in and said, you know, our family's from the hills of Virginia. And it's so eye-opening how, like Amope said, you know, you just don't know, and you know, and it's just so nice to fit into something. So, and then, you know, having more programming centered around Appalachia, and presenters who can highlight and educate our community that we serve is something else that I want to make sure that we continue. So when we look at the library in the past, which is this old branch, you see this great Carnegie building, and then on the other side of the screen, you see this new and shiny branch that we are going to get. And, you know, how does that fit in with the Appalachian community? So this is what you probably see right now if you're in the Price Hill community. You know, the building is getting renovated, and I wanted to share some of the things that were going on. And here are some images of what the inside and outside look like in the initial process and how far it's come. So they've, you know, laid a lot of the groundwork, and they're scaffolding up, and right on target for our Price Hill branch to be finished by the end of 2020, or between the end of 2020 and spring of 2021. So far we're still right on track with that. And, you know, with our first floor, it's going to be nice and open. It'll be accessible to all with the new things that we are doing. And so the thing that I love about, you know, the thought that was put into the design is that we're doing what's called a renovation and expansion. So we are restoring the Carnegie building and just making sure that we have that integrity, that structural integrity, and making sure that we are keeping, you know, the beauty of that timeless design. And we're having this sort of perfect marriage between the old and the new to create this beautiful building. And we'll have on the first floor, you'll come in, and it'll be, you can access where we have the desk, and there's a children's and sort of tween/teen area that flows into each other. And what I love about this is the kids will have their own area, and, you know, they can just be kids, and it doesn't really interrupt any of the other people in the building, because, you know, we will have those sound barriers that will kind of diminish some of the you know, busyness of the branch. And we'll have lots more computers, and we'll have study rooms on the first floor and smaller meeting rooms. And then you go to the second floor, where we'll have larger meeting rooms and these two sub rooms on the left-hand side of the building. And we also have an adult reading area, where it's a quiet area for adults to go and have a kind of a space of their own. So this is what we have to look forward to. We have this nice building to look forward to. But I am a true believer that if the community can't come to us, that we have to come to them. So outreach is a pivotal point that I want to make in my career while at the Price Hill branch, and making sure that, you know, going down into Lower Price Hill, because there are a lot of customers who either don't have transportation or the means to get up to the hill, to get to even the rec center when we were there, which were great community partners. So just making sure that we're being innovative with the types of programming that we're doing and reaching out to community partners and helping out one another. And then, you know, like I said, while we'll have this amazing building, we will also need to be very intentional about getting out to the community, just ensure that the community is being served as a whole. The pandemic has given us the opportunity to do things differently and, in my opinion, a better way to serve our community. And I just want to end with a quote from R. David Lanks, who is a librarian. Bad librarians build collections. Good libraries build services. Great libraries build communities. And I want to be a part of that process of helping build the community and making sure the community has what they need in terms of services. And I just want to thank everyone for attending our presentation. And if you have any questions that may not be answered here, feel free to reach out to me or our panelists from the UAC. And a lot of you should have my email already. If you don't, I'll put it in the chat so you have it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That way we can open up for some questions.
And I also just want to put in a plug. I've done it in the chat, and so you can see it there if you can see the chat. But just to encourage everyone also who's not already signed up to receive the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition's newsletter, to sign up at communications, or to email communications@uacvoice.org. You can also find our website is UAC, if it's uacvoice.org, I think. And yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is.
And okay, and you can sign up there or should be able to sign up there, or at least do contact us there as well. It's we'd love to. Excuse me, losing my voice here, even though I haven't talked that much, or maybe I have, maybe it's telling me something. But we'd love to continue to connect with everyone virtually and in person, and someday at the new Price Hill Library.
Yes. So I want to go back in the chat and look at some of the questions people may have. And I love that you all were sharing.
Anna Maria, may I help you?
I love that you all were sharing some of your personal experience and where your family's from. That's great to have. And if you're okay with it, I'm gonna save some of those and send it over to Michael, and maybe he can find a way to incorporate that in like a thank you on the website of thank you for attending our presentation. So I did see, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I also got a message from Mike Templeton, who's somewhere on this call, or at least he was, who writes our blogs, and he'll be writing a blog about this this event at some point, and so we can, if we have access to those questions and comments, we can pick up on some of those in the blog as well.
Yes, I will send you all everything. I'll send you everything. That way you have it. I saw that somebody asked about Carnegie. Is the original building a Carnegie sponsored library? It is. It is.
Oh, there you go, Mope.
It is a Carnegie, which is why we were very intentional in the planning process of making sure that we were preserving that structural integrity of that Carnegie. I mean, the Carnegie libraries are beautiful parts of our history, and we want to make sure that we do everything to preserve that. And I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but you know, we are now a part of the historical district in Price Hill. So that was, you know, a great thing that we were able to preserve that that history there. And then I'm trying to see if there's any other questions in here. And if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. And if you don't, it's okay.
I don't have a question specifically, and I'm sorry, my video's off. Let me start that. Here we go. But I am an AmeriCorps member serving with the city of Cincinnati in the Ohio History Service Corps. And my project for next year, starting in September, is to identify 100 historic properties that have not yet been identified in East Price Hill. So I just wanted to, first of all, introduce myself to the group because you're going to be seeing a lot more of me. And second of all, if anyone has any, knows of any structures in East Price Hill that you think would be good for my survey, I'm going to put my email in the chat box, and please feel free to reach out. I want to try to get as diverse and as underrepresented of a survey together as I can. So I am definitely looking forward to hearing from any of you that might have a building to share.
Thank you, Carrie. I definitely think maybe some of our panelists would be some good people to reach out to you. And then feel free to reach out to me because I can get you some resources from the library. And then maybe even get you connected with some other organizations in Price Hill.
Thank you.
Yeah, contact me. I was raised and born and still there. So I have a lot of different ones for you. So that'd be great. I'm Nancy Laird.
Yes.
Yeah, Nancy she's got it.
I'm there.
Things that I hadn't known. All right, did anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I'm just going to say, great show. I'm glad you did it. And I hope that we'll be able to follow up with our families and the younger generation and get them a chance to watch it. Let us know
That'd be cool.
to see it.
Program.
Yes, it's going to be on the library's social media accounts, the library's YouTube account, and then UAC will post it as well.
Right.
It's very important that we educate our community and provide them with the resources because we want to make sure that we are, getting this information out and not being the gatekeepers.
Right.
And so yes, we definitely will make sure we get it out. And I also wanted to share that you guys can utilize my ancestry on the library's website to kind of look at those family trees as well, and contact our genealogy department to get some information too. And it's all free.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra.
Yeah.
Oh, happy to share.
Free is the best price of all.
Sure is. All righty, everyone. I am so happy that we were able to do this presentation. Again, I thank my panelists. You all were amazing. And again, I need to thank our information and reference librarians for assisting me with finding this information. So I am going to stop recording, and I'd like to ask my panelists to stick around. That way we can chat once everybody has gone and asked their questions if they needed to.